Hello and welcome to Skynet Today's Last Week in AI podcast, where you can hear AI researchers chat about what's going on with AI. As usual, in this episode, we'll provide summaries and discussion of last week's most interesting AI news. You can also check out our Last Week in AI newsletter at lastweekin.ai for articles we didn't cover in this episode. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Sharon Zhou.
And I am your second host, not yet Dr. Andrei Kurenkov. And in this episode, we're going to do a usual mix of applications, business, research, advancements, and society stories. We're going to talk about how there's new wearable AI-powered tech, how there was another dramatic firing at Google AI, some new research on detecting weak heart pump with an Apple Watch using AI, and a new DALL-E-esque text-to-image model. We'll also talk about how UK regulators can use auditing algorithms for AI, and a new machine learning model to predict homelessness among US soldiers. And we'll finish up with some fun stories about AI writing wine and beer reviews, visualizing your Spotify tracks in a sort of graph, and finally, updates to Boston Dynamics cute dog robot. So let's go ahead and dive in.
All right. First up is Wearable AI-powered whole breast ultrasound system cleared by the FDA. So this article discusses how there is now an FDA-approved ultrasound for whole breast ultrasound by iSono Health, and that is based in SF. The startup did announce that the FDA approved one of its technologies, which is a portable ultrasound system that uses AI to generate whole breast images with just a few minutes of scanning. And so basically a patient is strapped into this thing, and it looks like a, quote, high-tech inverse of Madonna's infamous cone bra. And the system activates, and it doesn't require a trained ultrasound technologist to operate. So that's cool. So a less technical person can use it. Also, scanning the entire breast volume actually only takes a minute, which is much faster than 10 to 15 minutes of manual probing, which is normally what is done. And iSono's technology actually takes the 2D images of breast tissue and generates 3D images from those so that a physician can look at it from any device and then be able to see if there are some issues over that app. So very interesting technology. And this is connected with another article that we see of FDA plays Tooth Fairy awards clearance to VideaHealth's cavity spotting AI. And this is a second article that's very, very similar in the sense that the FDA again bestowed clearance on an AI algorithm, and this time from a different startup, VideaHealth, that can help dentists identify cavities in X-rays. So, they can now look at, millions of data. It was trained on millions of data points and look across, a dental X-ray and be able to help dentists detect and see and reduce the number of misses that dentists might have of caries lesions by 43% and also incorrect diagnoses by 15%. So all in all, a very interesting week for AI health applications cleared by the FDA.
Yeah, and I think these are both pretty exciting, right? Like screening for breast cancer is very important. It's very common. I just Googled it. About 1 in 8 US women, so 13%, will develop breast cancer. So that's obviously huge, and making it more accessible, to have screening, high quality screening is crucial. So this sort of seemingly pretty significant advancement is a really big deal. And likewise, obviously, we all don't like teeth cavities, and it's a pretty common thing to check as well. And, here it's maybe less of a leap, but still improving the number of missed things and incorrect diagnoses by large margins is a big deal. So yeah, really, really cool to see such impactful products really, already getting improved and potentially, coming to market relatively soon.
Yeah, all very, very cool things. Seeing the AI health stuff get into the hands of actual clinics is very, very cool to me, because I remember when this was all kind of research and we were all very worried about this going out there. I'm still slightly worried, obviously, of this going out there, but I'm glad that we're making progress and moving towards deploying these systems.
Definitely. And, also it's worth noting that these are all, technologies that are meant to be used by the doctors to sort of help them, right? So they do scans, they provide 2D imagery, 3D imagery in the case of mammograms, and then still the doctor can inspect them via computer or tablet to interact with the images and see different kinds of views. And similarly with the cavity spotting AI, that's ultimately based on the x-rays, which assists the dentist in analyzing them. So also a good thing to note is that this is not replacing anybody. This is just making people more efficient and better, which is obviously something that is a good thing.
Always a good thing.
And on to another story that is not so positive. It's titled "Another Firing Among Google's AI Brain Trust and More Discord." This is from the New York Times. So this was pretty dramatic, and I've seen some conversations about it on Twitter. The short version is that a researcher, Dr. Chatterjee, was fired in March, shortly after Google told its team that it would not publish a paper that refuted and criticized some of the claims made in a prior Google paper published in Nature. So this paper that I believe we covered is on using reinforcement learning to do chip layout or chip design, and they actually claimed they used it to improve their own TPU designs. So after that paper was published, this researcher, Chatterjee, and several people wrote a critical paper, essentially, of this, claiming that some of the results maybe don't hold up. And afterward, submitted it for kind of approval within Google, and it was not approved for publication. And ultimately, Dr. Chatterjee was fired. Now, this may seem kind of fishy, and may seem like Google is hiding something. From what I've seen in the discussions among researchers, it appears more likely that this was actually justified. My impression personally is that it seems like this researcher is a bit of a toxic presence whose sort of criticism was not well founded. At least that's what I've seen in the grapevine, so to speak. But obviously, still not a good thing for Google AI that this sort of stuff is happening.
Sounds like a lot of drama coming within that org, unfortunately, still brewing. I do know one of the friends with Anna Goldie, one of the lead authors on the subsequent paper that was published, but with Chatterjee's name taken off. And I believe she did write a statement that Chatterjee has waged, quote, a campaign of misinformation against me and Azalea, who is her other co-author there, for over 2 years now. And that's very sad to see. So yeah, it does seem like there's a, clearly lots of drama and not the most encouraging workplace.
Yes, indeed. This article did draw a comparison to the prior high-profile firings that we've talked about extensively last year, the firing of Timnit Gebru and her co-lead on the Google AI ethics team. And I've seen some criticism of that as well among AI researchers, sort of basically the connection being not kind of reasonable because the situations are seemingly quite different, where in one case Google really was maybe silencing valuable criticism. In this case, it seems like the opposite. They actually did defend good researchers against sort of almost harassing like behavior. So yeah, I think to draw the connection there is maybe incorrect, but obviously the bigger picture is this is not great for Google AI. And I've also seen a lot, on the Twitterverse, people are saying a lot of people are moving on from Google AI. So I don't know what's happening, but something maybe isn't great over there, at least from the outsider perspective. Not what we really know.
Yeah, I mean, these things ebb and flow. So this is definitely one of the ebbing times for Google AI, it seems. And I definitely, it ebbs and flows across a lot of different organizations. And recently there also was, Ian Goodfellow left Apple. And so that was a whole big news story as well. And so that's probably going to cause people to leave Apple as well. And so it very much waxes and wanes. And I guess it's hard to, stay on top and be perfect all the time. So hopefully, I mean, Google and all these companies, learn from their mistakes and then be better and start to flow again. But it is, yeah.
It is worth noting that Google AI is massive, and it still publishes by a good margin the most papers in most of the top AI conferences. So it's, it is much bigger than most other industry labs, and absurdly bigger than academia type labs. So the dynamics are sort of inevitably different, and there may be these sort of conflicts that, if it's happened in academia, probably it wouldn't make the news, but here it certainly did.
Cool. And on to our lightning round. The first article is AI model can accurately detect multiple retinal diseases in real time. And so this is a new study that can recognize multiple retinal abnormalities at the same time that's in your eye. And this can help the early diagnosis of these diseases in underdeveloped areas.
And our second article, we only have two for this section, is Intel wins DARPA RACER-Sim program. So DARPA, which is the U.S. military branch that does experimental research and does a lot of funding and different programs, has awarded Intel, with support from Intel Labs and some other groups, the opportunity to develop an advanced simulation solution for off-road autonomous ground vehicles. So this new robotic autonomy in complex environments with resiliency simulation, which is a big acronym for RACER-Sim. That's pretty cute. Created an off-road simulation platform to help with development of, presumably AI-powered autonomous vehicles off-road. And there's some fun screenshots here where you can see it's sort of like a video game engine, which has a sort of desert-like environment, and you presumably have physics and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty neat.
And on to our research and advancement section. The first article is Mayo researchers use AI to detect weak heart pump via patient's Apple Watch ECGs. So this article is about how an algorithm developed at Mayo Clinic was used using single lead ECG tracings from an Apple Watch. So just using your Apple Watch, and can identify this weak heart pump, which affects 2 to 3% of people globally, and also up to 9% of people over the age of 60. So that's quite a number of people, actually. And unfortunately, this problem has no symptoms, but it is associated with various things like racing heartbeats, leg swelling, shortness of breath. And specifically, it's important that when doctors know that there's a weak heart pump present. There are a lot of treatments available that are life-saving and symptom preventing. So it's critical to actually be able to detect that and use an AI here to just, embed that into an Apple Watch, watch that ECG signal, and then detect this condition. And so it's pretty exciting to see this, because this could be huge. And, as we deploy things onto these, watches, it's just so critical to do this kind of background monitoring of people who are wearing these watches to basically notify them to go to the hospital. So the participants of the study securely transmitted a total of 125,610 ECGs from 46 states in 11 countries over a 6-month period. And the average use of the app was about twice a month. And the overall participation was high. 92% used the app more than once. And each patient recorded many ECGs. And researchers cleaned up those readings and used that for the study into an AI model.
Yeah, again, another story related to healthcare that seems pretty exciting. Here, this is an earlier stage, so they say this is just the first step, and their next steps is to kind of do a more global perspective to test this in a more diverse populations and demonstrate that it still works. But obviously here, this is awesome because, Apple Watches are relatively inexpensive and a lot of people already have them. And given how, pretty common this is, 9% of older people and even just 2 to 3% is a huge population. So if you had something that could continuously monitor you, and you didn't have to check for that actively, that would be very exciting. And honestly, I wish I could use my Fitbit to help me with getting a better picture of my health beyond just how many calories I burn and how many steps I take.
Definitely.
Yeah, I did see, I think sleep tracking is improving these days, so you can get a better picture of your sleep quality, which I've personally been using to find out just how bad my sleep patterns are.
Is it really that bad?
It could be better. Got
it. It's okay.
Yeah. So very neat research, and would be cool to see where this goes next. On to our next story, we have Tsinghua and BAAI, a company, present CogView 2, which achieves state-of-the-art competitive text-to-image generation with 10x speedups. So just recently, we talked about DALL-E 2, which has been all the rage, super exciting. Another text-to-image model. Basically, you tell it, draw a tall giraffe playing basketball, and it can actually do that with pretty astounding quality. And so this is a very similar type of research, with CogView 2 being kind of in spirit the same concept, but with a lot of slightly different technical details. And the exciting part is them really speeding things up via some technical approaches to super resolution and some other tricks. Now, they do compare their results to DALL-E 2, and they don't quite measure up, but they're still a good deal better than most of the prior work. And part of the reason they don't quite measure up seems to be that DALL-E is trained on way more data and is, I believe, much bigger. So, and it has some other architectural details. So, I guess that makes sense that it's better. But still, this demonstrates ongoing progress and sort of a convergence of ideas, it seems like, as the main concept here of basically more steps of super resolution seem to be the same in spirit. So it's I guess nothing groundbreaking, but it is cool to see these sort of parallel tracks all attacking this problem and making really significant progress.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how this is a almost international battle across countries. So, DALL-E 2 comes out and now China's like, okay, we need to make sure our universities show something. And I'm sure Russia will put something out, or maybe not right now, but like different countries will put things out almost as like a national pride thing with AI. And I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah, they did also demonstrate here something different from DALL-E, which they can do multiple things with this, which DALL-E could also do image editing, but here they can also do things like image captioning, and they showed that with some fine-tuning, you can get those sorts of results. But yeah, I mean, I think this also probably demonstrates that it's getting easier to do this kinds of research just based on where we are conceptually in terms of our techniques. Yeah. Obviously, transformers are all the rage, and it seems like they can do no wrong. And
do no wrong.
Here's another example where, well, at least, they can get state of art, which is what most people care about, right?
Got it. That type of wrong.
Yes.
Do no worse on the benchmarks, let's put it that way.
Yeah. So another cool result, and we don't cover it quite as much here, but in parallel to all of this, there is also quite an active community of open source sort of hackers working to match with DALL-E 2, and they're making a lot of progress on that front as well. So even if OpenAI doesn't give public access to this level of quality for text to image, it's going to be available to just about everybody soon, it looks like.
It definitely galvanizes the community to actually produce open source versions for everyone to be able to use, because they know it's very much gated by these companies.
Definitely. And that's really exciting to see. I've had a lot of fun over the years playing with stuff like Art Breeder. And honestly, I wish I had more time playing with text to image stuff. One of these days, I'll get around to it.
I love DALL-E too, and I play with it a lot.
What are some of the
you may have noticed on my Twitter feed.
What are some prompts that you've had fun with lately?
Oh my gosh, I really like this glittering apple I made, this rainbow apple.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Very nice.
There's something so aesthetically pleasing about that to me. I just love it. I love colors and sparkles, and I was like, I love fruit too, so it's great.
All right, well, check out Sharon's Twitter for some of those fun things.
Check out a lot of people's Twitter. Check out the hashtag DALL-E too.
Yeah, check out. Yeah, there's every day I see new stuff that's kind of mind blowing. So
yeah, agreed.
An exciting space for sure.
And on to our lightning round. The first article in the latest research from the University of Toronto, machine learning-based approach speeds up the counting of microplastics. So the researchers at the University of Toronto have developed new techniques for counting and categorizing microplastics. And this is especially important because microplastics are found in drinking water, food, in the air. But before researchers can actually fully understand the true impact of these particles on health, we have to find faster and more effective ways for quantifying what is actually present.
And our other stories over here are Northeastern University and Microsoft expand StyleGAN's latent space to surpass the state of art on real face semantic editing. So StyleGAN is one of these things that has been a pretty big deal as far as models. A lot of the sort of fake faces you've seen out there are from StyleGAN. And more recently, it's also been used not just for generating images, but also for semantic image editing, where you can say, make this older, make this person smile, etc. Things like that. And so this paper here, titled Expanding the Latent Space of StyleGAN for Real Face Editing, essentially presents an improvement to this feature of editing faces. by making a larger latent space. Do I know what that means? Not really, but it's cool to see that there's some progress. And then the last story here, we got Microsoft AI researchers develop Molar, a deep learning-based generative model that enables efficient drug design. So we've talked about these sorts of things previously. It's a pretty big deal to use AI for drug development. There's been a lot of work in that space. And here there's yet another new work on this topic. There's a paper called Learning to Extend Molecular Scaffolds with Structural Motifs. And it looks into uncovering new molecules more quickly.
And specifically, I guess, just to double click on the Molar model, it actually, they're representing the molecules as graphs, and the atoms are the vertices, and the bonds between the atoms are the edges of the graph. And they use a graph neural network as an encoder in a VAE type model, as an autoencoder type model.
Mm-hmm.
And just a quick note on the StyleGAN thing, I think they're trying to make it so that StyleGAN could also improve with face editing, because a lot of the DALL-E 2 stuff is showing that you can mask things out and be able to edit that. So I think they're just trying to get that to the same par in terms of controllability.
Yeah, trying to make GANs relevant. Now with Transformers are all the rage.
Well, it actually is not Transformers exactly doing the DALL-E, so...
That's true. That's a good. Oh, it's diffusion now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Soon remember, MLPs will soon take over everything, is my guess.
Looks like it. CogV2 is still Transformers, so it's still useful for some things. Alrighty, we are midway-ish through the episode, and that means we're gonna do our ad read once again.
Your favorite part.
My favorite part, and as we've said in the past, we actually do like doing this because the thing we are promoting is a thing we're using right at this very moment. It's Zencastr, our tool for recording the podcast. So we've been using it for like 2.5 years almost at this point. From the very beginning, we started using it when COVID hit and we had to go remote. And we think it's great. It records separate audio and video tracks for guests and ourselves, our two hosts. The separate tracks are great for editing. There's cloud backup, so we just download it after recording. It's super easy to use, nothing to download. You just send a link similar to Zoom, and it just records. I've had very few technical issues. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you need to do some sort of audio recording or want to start your own podcast. And you can go to zen.ai/lastweekend. And you can go to zen.ai/lastweekinai and get 30% off your first 3 months of a pro account. And if you do that, we get some money. So, if you feel like doing that, we'll be thankful. But try it out for free. It's pretty powerful as well.
It's definitely saved our butts a few times when we thought we lost our recording. It actually does just hold on to it. So that's great. Thank you, Zencastr. And on to our society and ethics section. UK regulators' path for AI starts with auditing algorithms. So the Digital Regulation Cooperation Forum, the DRCF, which is a group of 4 UK regulators, actually published last week a couple documents where it guided businesses about, the risk, the benefits of AI, and how to audit algorithms. And so specifically, the UK, like many other countries, they're developing a regulatory framework to govern the use of AI. But unlike other governments, such as the EU, which has already drafted a law and is already discussing it in Parliament, the UK is taking a slower but more comprehensive approach to AI regulation. The US is also, behind the EU here. The UK published a national AI strategy setting out its plan to become an AI, quote, superpower last year in 2021. And this strategy had included the creation of a national AI research and an innovation program, an AI standards hub, the modification of existing laws to include AI, and basically, one of the first areas that the DRCF now is seeking, which is much more specific, is auditing algorithms and how to take coordinated action in doing so, and actually taking input from the public about what to do here.
Yeah. So still, early days in general, it seems like both the EU and UK, and especially the US or Canada, are still in a process of figuring out the sort of legal frameworks for AI and how to, impose limits and create audits and things like that. We've talked before about how the EU has this concept of sort of different levels of risk for things. And here, the UK seems to want something similar, which is defining what to audit against, what to look for, what kind of outcomes they seek, and basically several goals to just figure out what you want with respect to auditing. For instance, like if people are impacted by it, how do you seek to get fair or get proper response? So right now, this is just 6 different proposals with different levels of regulatory intervention, and they're looking for feedback. And yeah, it seems like we've been talking about these sorts of kind of incremental steps now for a bit, and it's encouraging to see still these sorts of things coming out. Definitely, the progress isn't super fast, but it is there. If only we saw something like this for the US.
We will be behind all of these, but we'll see how they work and maybe stumble. I don't know.
Indeed.
Pros and cons in being second, or in this case, I guess third. Or more.
Yeah. And on to our second story relating to society. We got a unique machine learning model predicts homelessness among U.S. soldiers before their transition to civilian life. This is covering the paper predicting homelessness among U.S. Army soldiers no longer on active duty. And so researchers from the Massachusetts General Hospital and the Harvard Medical School basically looked at a whole bunch of factors you can get from a survey, I think like 2,000 indicators, to predict what kind of soldiers or how to predict that soldiers who are no longer in the military might wind up homeless. And the factors, somewhat unsurprisingly, are that these soldiers might have lifetime depression, trauma of having a loved one murdered, and PTSD. And this is an important study. Right now there are an estimated 40,000 homeless veterans in the US, which is 8% of the homeless population. There's been efforts since 2009 to address it, but still, it's a huge number. And this is quite seemingly successful look into how you could get ahead of a problem, predict who might be at risk instead of addressing it after someone is already on the streets. So clearly, hopefully, a good step towards addressing this problem more seriously.
I really like the quote from Ronald Kessler in there, who is the senior author of the study and also a nationally recognized sociologist, who said, quote, "For the first time, we're applying to homelessness a, quote, personalized medicine approach that leverages differences in an individual's biology, lifestyle, and environment to determine who is at greatest risk with a higher degree of precision than ever before." And I think that's true. That is really, really important to do. And this will help significantly. And of course, is attached to, all the, giving active duty questionnaire and near the end of active duty, giving those questionnaires and helping the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs very tactically to identify and proactively target those soldiers who are at risk.
Yeah, and it's worth noting here the way this was done is that data from nearly 17,000 soldiers between 2011 and 2014, which this data included questions about housing history, childhood experiences, traumatic events and stressors, and basically a lot of things. They used this data and then applied machine learning to kind of narrow down from 2,000 particular variables to the main ones. So I believe they got pretty high accuracy. And so this could actually be used in practice if some of these things like questionnaires are added. So hopefully that will be the case.
Right. And on to our fun and neat section. The first article is researchers taught AI to write wine and beer reviews, and they're pretty convincing. So this is a group of researchers from Dartmouth, I believe, used around 125,000 reviews that were published in the Wine Enthusiast magazine to train their program and to teach how to write wine reviews. And they repeated the process with over 140,000 reviews from the Rate Beer website for beer reviews. And some of them are really funny. They did test, the reviews on a group of human testers, and they were asked to read, an AI one and a human one for each of something like 300 different wines and 69 different beers. And most of the time, the testers couldn't tell the difference between the AI one and the human one. And so some examples include, this is a sound Cabernet. It's very dry and a little thin in blackberry fruit, which accentuates the acidity and tannins. Drink up. So that's one of them. Another one is pretty dark for a rosé and full-bodied with cherry, raspberry, vanilla, and spice flavors. It's dry with good acidity.
Yeah, it's... it's maybe not too surprising given the quality of GPT-3 and that this is using inputs about each drink's winery or brewery, ABV, and cost. So from that, you can probably get a pretty decent approximate review, especially in terms of the quality of the writing, which for this kind of short description certainly is not beyond what we can do with AI these days, maybe is even kind of easy. This was published in the International Journal of Research Marketing. It's titled Complementing Human Effort in Online Reviews, a Deep Learning Approach to Automatic Content Generation and Review Synthesis. So according to authors, the idea is that this could sort of generate the first draft of a review and the human could then modify it. Although I'm not too sure that the modification would be that necessary. I don't know.
Yeah, and this is definitely not using something super state of the art. So I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
Though I think in this case, honestly, it's, they're writing very short reviews. So, yeah, this is pretty doable. I don't know how much you need to even drink the wine to really write the review. No, I bet you do. But
I think if you tried the wine, or especially with beers, I think you could probably tell that it wasn't quite on, but it's fun. It's a fun little paper, not to be dismissive, but it's not too cutting edge. And I could easily see this being done for a lot of other products. Although for things like laptops, obviously it's not as easy because there are a lot of details to get right. So it's definitely not as straightforward. You could definitely do fake restaurant reviews pretty easily, so that would be pretty amusing.
For better or for worse.
For better or
there's
for
a bad
worse.
application of that.
Yeah. And our second story over here is T-SNE to view and order your Spotify tracks. This is actually a post on the machine learning subreddit that is a project post. So there are these project posts that just describe things that different people who post built. And this is a cool project where this person used the Spotify API to look at different songs in a given playlist and use metrics provided by Spotify, which is a lot of things. There's like danceability, energy, liveness, loudness, tempo, and valence, and more. And he used all this with a pretty well-known technique called T-SNE to basically plot a 2D chart where similar things are nearby and non-similar things are further away. And then with this interactive tool, you could actually do like kind of drag around and pick a different subset of music to create a new playlist. And I think he has a live demo online. So not super mind-blowing. It's a quick little project, but I do wish there was more of this sort of like data analysis on top of music collections just to inspect what is in there.
That's pretty cool. I mean, T-SNE is a very, classic type of dimensionality reduction method to visualize data and cluster it and see like what's close to what. And so this is a cool little project that'll help your day-to-day and playlist making, which is, pretty fun. I like when I see really fun applications.
Yeah, it's really fun. It generates basically a bunch of dots on a 2D plane where, again, it's a distribution of songs. You can use your mouse and look over each dot to see what song it is, which artist it is, and then kind of draw a circle around a bunch of songs to save a new playlist. Which could actually be useful possibly if you have like a giant rap playlist or a giant rock playlist. You can then subdivide that into subgenres or something, which would be actually very useful. So congrats to the person who built this and then posted and actually made it a usable demo. Congrats to 40WD, this Reddit user. And we'll have a link to this in our description as usual, so feel free to check it out. And for our last story, we're going to quickly touch on this YouTube video and blog post that Boston Dynamics put out called What's New in Spot. So Spot is their kind of dog-like yellow robot that they're actually selling to businesses for various applications. And they put out this kind of, blog post and video to showcase a variety of improvements that are definitely less showy. It's interesting to see a video from Boston Dynamics that's this serious. There's no dancing or parkour. Instead, it's showcasing a bunch of very practical things like a better user interface for using it, additional sensors, a better charger, things like that. So they really are making serious efforts to, get customers, which makes sense and is something we only started doing really a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think this video is actually geared towards our, potential customers looking to control Spot and be able to find a way to manage Spot and actually help with the operations and operating Spot, essentially. So it's not for the flashy. The flashiness is probably to hire people like us, Andre, and this is probably for the businesses who want to buy Spot. So the audience is different.
Yeah, but it's cool to see this kind of progress, and it's interesting to see these more low-level things. It's very practical. There's things like 5G connectivity, edge computing on board of it, things like that. So Boston Dynamics still hard at work building useful robots, pretty much ahead of anybody else out there.
And with that, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Scanner Today's Last Week in AI podcast. You can find the articles we discussed here today and subscribe to our weekly newsletter with similar ones at lastweekin.ai. Remember to subscribe, leave a rating, review us.
Review us. We haven't gotten a new review in a little while. I gotta say, I checked before every recording, and I always wish there was new ones. So, I'd appreciate it. But either way, do tune in to our future episodes.